How do you artfully reinvent a single character who is already so well defined? With Solo, a Star Wars story, it's pretty clear that Lucasfilm wanted to double down on that sci-fi Western aesthetic that Han Solo embodied so well. And seeing as the popularity around Han Solo has garnered one of the most fervent and toxic fan bases around, he was fertile soil. Welcome to my video review for Solo, a Star Wars story. To preface this, I'm sorry that this is getting to you guys so late. I actually wanted to write a formal review, so I sat down and really committed myself to doing something that I'm not so comfortable doing, and that was writing. Actually putting words to the page and going from start to finish, thesis and all, work out my thoughts on this movie. And I actually accomplished it and found some time to record, and this is that. So you're welcome. Let me know what you guys think about this format, and I'll get into some more informal thoughts at the end of this video, but I also really want to let you guys know that there will be spoilers in this video. The short answer to that question that I posed at the beginning, how you artfully reinvent a single character, is that you don't even try. Just accept that this character has made his complete arc and move on. But this is capitalism, and nerd culture is one of the most profitable machines out there, and we just had to justify the Kessel Run as a thing that actually happened in this universe. It couldn't just be braggadocio, could it? Now, I'll put this right out in front. This is an enjoyable movie. I had a fun time with it. It has all the makings of a fun time in a galaxy far, far away. But in its efforts to be a fun ride, it ends up playing into Solo's toxic tendencies, doing dirty by more interesting characters, and adding unnecessary lore to Han Solo's backstory. The structure is pretty easy to get on board with. Corellian youth Han Solo is looking for the quickest route to becoming a pilot with a really fast ship so he can carelessly cruise the galaxy with his girl Kira. After getting unceremoniously separated from her, he lands himself in a series of mishaps with a gang of criminals trying to make a big score. That, in its essence, could make for a great movie. But this ain't it. And honestly, it's a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy for me. I knew this film had a troubled production, especially when a director known for his white noise was brought on to fix things. But honestly, it comes down to the writing. This film was written by Lawrence and John Kasdan, and it was a passion project for the elder Kasdan, who has a storied past with the character of Han Solo. He helped to define him in the latter two original trilogy films, and this is where Han's best and worst qualities were solidified. And when I say worst qualities, I'm talking about that scene in Empire Strikes Back with him and Leia while she's trying to work on the ship and he's being really predatory. Don't at me about it, just go watch Pop Culture Detective's video about it. It's great. Troubled though the character may be, he's still an essential part of what makes the original trilogy so memorable. And Lawrence Kasdan was even brought back to give Han his tearful send-off in The Force Awakens. Arc completed! Done! No need to return to this character. But how did Han meet Chewie? What did the Kessel Run entail? What did that infamous card game between Han and Lando look like? And how? How did Han get his last name? Yeah, that's actually something that this film addresses. Cringingly so. So these are the burning questions of our time, and I don't know. Maybe they shouldn't be. I was mostly just curious how Han and Chewie met, and even that scene wasn't handled that well. I'm almost 30 years old. I have a decent amount of experience with disappointment. And this is a disappointing movie. But like I said, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy and all that. I didn't really want a Han Solo movie in the first place, and what I got out of it was a mildly entertaining movie that also confirmed what I had been fearing all along. And yeah, sure, I had hopes that it could be as good as like Rogue One, but I knew it wasn't gonna work its way into my favorite Star Wars movies of all time. The blanks this film seeks to fill in are necessary gray areas. But all the same, I would pay money to see a Max Rebo behind the music documentary, so of course I'm gonna shell out money to see how Han got to be the guy that we see in the Mos Eisley Cantina. But it all goes horribly wrong in incredibly uninteresting ways. It just seems like the Kasdans wanted to paint these monumental moments in Han's history in the easiest way possible, with the broadest strokes. And worst of all, his character arc is identical, pretty much identical to the one in A New Hope, and it kind of deflates what he goes through in that film. It's the worst disservice you could do to Han Solo, and probably the best disservice you could do to his fans. And look, I'm gonna start walking it back a little bit and talk about the positives, namely the acting, because the acting is really the big showcase in this film. Alden Ehrenreich is doing a fine job of mimicking Harrison Ford, but mostly bringing his own qualities to the role. He's a class act, and if you didn't like him here, I'd suggest checking out his work in Hail Caesar.
Would that it was so simple.
Keep your head still. Would that it were so simple.
Would that it was so simple.
Would that it were so simple.
I'm trying to say that, Mr. Lawrence.
And look, I always knew this wouldn't be the time or place for a straight-up impersonation, and I'm pleased that Ehrenreich didn't play to the crowd, even though the writing does. The characterization of Han Solo in this film is, to say the least, a bit frustrating. The cast-ins were never going to walk back Han's worst attributes, but they could have at least navigated his origin story with a little more verve. This version of Han wasn't necessarily written like he was 10 years younger, because almost every line feels dictated by a character who hasn't yet developed. I was hoping for a new side of the character, but it's just the same old Han in a younger body. But surely the supporting cast would bring an extra dimension to this film. At the very least, Woody Harrelson was an excellent casting choice as Beckett, even if he's recycling most of the character traits from Haymitch in The Hunger Games. Emilia Clarke is adding another franchise to her belt, but isn't given the material that would actually flex her skills. Everybody says that she's a bad actress, but I'm not on board with that yet. It's just been mostly tentpole roles for her with Game of Thrones, Terminator, and this. There's just been nothing meaty for her yet.
We definitely do!
Go watch Me Before You. It's a bad film, but she's having a lot of fun in it and doing some pretty great work. There's potential to her character of Kira, but it only goes so far as spoken exposition. This film is great at telling and not showing. Kira amounts to nothing more than just a mere tool for Han's development. And Donald Glover turns in an excellent impersonation of Billy D. Williams' Lando Calrissian, even adding in new aspects to his character.
Everything you've heard about me is true.
My biggest gripes are with the minor female characters, who were clearly expendable by the writer's standards. Thandie Newton plays Val, an afro-sporting badass linked with Beckett. Then there's Lando's droid co-pilot L3, played by Phoebe Waller-Bridge, who might just have the best subplot of the movie. Unfortunately, both of these storylines are cut tragically short. I understand that sacrifice is an important storytelling device, but did you really have to kill off the first on-screen black femme in Star Wars cinematic history? To add insult to injury, L3 is an exciting character, possibly the most exciting character post-Disney's acquisition of Lucasfilm. She breathes life into what has been a bleak story up to her first scene in the film. It's just frustrating to see another batch of great female characters get fridged in the service of men's development. We saw it in Infinity War, we saw it in Deadpool 2, and now here. And worst of all, the story always focuses back to Han, who has no immediate connection to these characters. Beckett never mentions Val again, and Lando suffers in silence. Han drags the film down. So why is his a story worth telling when we already know the outcome? Even the action sequences are brought down by poor cutting and a weightless sense of meaning. Many of the biggest and loudest set pieces cut very abruptly to a very silent scene, which almost gave me the sensation of having my breathing cut short. And mixed with the dim cinematography, it can feel a little suffocating at times. Maybe it was my screening, standard 2D at a local AMC theater, but the cinematography is too muddled to see most of what's happening, and even in the daylight, nothing pops or adds dimension to the frame. And I've seen this critique spouted off by many who have seen the film, keen-eyed critics and regular audiences alike. Bradford Young has some good ideas, and I specifically love the ways he uses shadows and vignettes and super close-ups, but many of these ideas only come through sparsely. I want to return to it in Dolby just so I can better see what Young was achieving. Let me just say that living in the Southeast, where there are no special screenings, no film projectors, just really sucks. If you don't see something in IMAX or Dolby, you're getting the short end of the stick. Many will walk away from this film seeing a dark future for Lucasfilm's Star Wars anthology series, but I'm still hopeful for what's next. My only protest is that you don't explore Han's backstory any further. We're good. You got it out of your system. We're done here. Next junction. Best of luck to ya. Only time and box office returns will tell. I'm not ready to throw the whole anthology model out yet. I still think it has promise, and clearly the story group has threads that they want to explore. All I ask is for Disney not to play fast and loose with this franchise, like they did at times with Marvel.
There's a lesson to be learned here.
Don't foster dead-on-arrival stories that have no bearing on your stories going forward. And maybe I'm just drinking the Kool-Aid, like usual, but I still think that Star Wars is a franchise worth dignifying. I'm going to give Solo, a Star Wars story, a 5 out of 10. All right, so I'm going to get a little informal now. I'm going to go off script. I'm not going to close my computer because that has my audio running on it. But I want to know what you guys think of this model. I've never done a full review written before, so please tell me how you think it went. I think it went pretty well. I'm pretty happy with it. I'm mostly proud of myself. I won't fully know if it's something that I will commit to doing more often if you guys do or don't like it. So let me know. I'm going to break up my thoughts a little bit more now. I have varying notes on what went down in this movie, some of my bigger problems with it, some of my things that I actually liked about it but couldn't find a place in the written review for. So first and foremost, the dice. You know, there were the dice that were kind of planted in the original trilogy films. I never even knew that they were there personally. Maybe it was a subconscious thing, but I never saw them. And then they bring them back in, I don't remember if they had them in The Force Awakens, but they were in The Last Jedi really heavily. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. So they're clearly building those up to set them up in Solo, a Star Wars story, and then he just has them. They're just on a chain already at the very beginning of the film. I was like, so he doesn't use those in the card game. He didn't have them in another point in the film, or like he didn't use them in another point in the film. They're just there. Already kind of this little lucky charm that he carries around with him. And I'm just like, you built that up for such a little payoff, and that really bummed me out. One take that I've seen online that actually kind of helped me walk back my feelings on the characterization of Solo is that this is a character that comes from poverty, who is built on this ideology of kind of one-upping himself all the time and constantly impressing the other people around him. Yeah, that makes sense for this younger version of the character, and I dig that, but I also just don't dig everything else that they built around that. It didn't work for me. I mean, I understand that this is the character of Han Solo. That makes perfect sense to me, but I was also looking to chip away at that more. Like, I was really hoping that they were going to take what we had in A New Hope and then just constantly just like break away at it, because it's still just like he's the same character that we have in the original trilogy, but younger. The score by John Powell and a little bit by John Williams is really good. It's really fun. I think a lot of people wanted something a little bit darker from it, but I think it was actually necessary to have it be a very fun film. And I really love John Powell, the way he utilizes just like this great driving instrumentation. It's perfect for this character, for this kind of film, and just does a lot of interesting things along the way. It's a lot of fun to listen to. It's on Spotify. It's obviously, you can buy it on iTunes. I just listened to it on Spotify because I just wanted a quick fix, and it actually helped me write this review. And going back to the cinematography, because I don't want to just leave it at Bradford Young shot this movie too dimly. That's just all it is. But because that's not. Because I've read multiple articles and watched videos about Bradford Young's ideology in shooting this film and shooting all of his films. And I think it's really intriguing what he was trying to do here, not just in setting up this seedy underbelly of the Star Wars universe, but also reflecting the dark times that we are going through as a nation. My feelings on the cinematography are still torn because obviously Bradford Young is doing great work, but when you take a film like this to major corporate theater chains, they're just going to look at it and be like, all right, we're going to use the same brightness settings on our projector bulbs that we usually do, and people are going to love it. It's going to be great. Tickets are going to be bought and concessions will be bought and whatever. We win no matter what. But you don't. And I don't know how the politics of these things work. Theater chain managers and their projectionists had just given this film a closer look. I think all audiences would have benefited more, because I think you're going to lose more audience members than you would have if, you just showed the film properly. And a lot's going to be spoken about franchise fatigue and this film coming out too quickly after the last Star Wars film. I'm not on board with that. I love having multiple Star Wars films in a year's time. I'm going to go to the theater to see these movies. That's just how it is. I know that a lot of other people don't operate that way, but I do. No. I think the studio is just going to see poor box office returns, and they're going to see that this was a film that came out way too soon after The Last Jedi, and they're going to say, all right, we're going to slow up on these. We're not going to make as many as often anymore, and people are going to learn to really cherish Star Wars as it's delivered to them. And my theory on the poor box office returns are that people just didn't want to see a Solo origin film. Personally, that's what I think. My 2 cents. And finally, I'm going to talk about Darth Maul because, wow, the implications are pretty wild there and kind of disappointing, and my thoughts are actually all over the place. Let me just say, first and foremost, I was actually kind of giddy by that reveal. I was like, that's the last thing I was expecting, even though the context cues were all over the place. Like, Kira name drop his fighting style, and then Dryden Voss had the twin red bladed brass knuckles that, you know, I should have been able to be like, oh, maybe it's Darth Maul. Maybe Darth Maul runs Crimson Dawn or whatever, Red Dawn. The Patrick Swayze reference is there somewhere, I'm sure. And obviously this implies that the Obi-Wan movie is next.
That's good news.
I don't know. I don't really want that. Going way back, right after Revenge of the Sith came out, there was a anthology comic series called Star Wars Visionaries. And in it, they explained how Darth Maul was hunting down Obi-Wan. He was out for blood. He had these crazy robot chicken legs, and he hunted him down all the way to Tatooine. And I thought, cool, that's neat as this side comic book story. I don't need any more than that. And then they started exploring it in the Clone Wars and Rebels. And while I still haven't watched all of Rebels, I enjoyed what they did in Clone Wars for the most part, but then they did away with him unceremoniously, and I was like, okay, maybe I need more now? Maybe? I don't know. So yeah, having Darth Maul pop up in this film was initially cool for me, somebody who has mostly kept up with the expanded universe and his story throughout. But as I started thinking about it, I was like, I don't know. For like other audiences, what is this going to be like? This is going to be like a weird, almost 20-year reunion with this character that they haven't seen since The Phantom Menace, who was chopped in half, and it was like, whatever, fuck that guy. So it kind of renders his reveal just in this murky, weird, gray area that I don't know how to feel about. But yeah, that pretty much summarizes all of my informal, scattered thoughts about Solo: A Star Wars Story. It's fun. It's fine. See it if you want. I don't know. I don't think it's a movie that you need to see on a big screen. I think, in fact, it might be better seeing it in a, dimly lit environment where, you control all of the lights. Okay, that's it for me. Thank you guys for watching. Like this video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I don't know what my next video is going to be or when I'm going to get it to you, but in the meantime, I appreciate your time. So thanks a lot.